Hello and welcome back to the Not Your Neurotypical Fitness podcast. And this is definitely not typical fitness. The neuro a little bit, but not typical. But I engaged with this amazing lady not so long ago now, and when we had a bit of a chat about the work she did, I just thought I couldn't not invite her on the podcast because there will be so many people who can learn from the amazing work that she does and take some really valuable insights. And from a very, very selfish perspective, I was just very interested. So if nothing else, I'll be the one listening back to this podcast on repeat because I know there's going to be some amazing, amazing things. So you'll probably have a bit of an insight from the title as to what we're chatting about. But Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself and what it is you do so I don't butcher it and downplay the amazing work that you do?
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. Yeah, so my name's Lisa. I am the female half of Been There, Got Out. My partner Chris and I are high conflict divorce strategists who specialize in something called legal abuse. So we work with the craziest cases, dealing with custody battles, divorces, separations, and co-parenting hell. We only work with one partner, like the more of the victim, and we help we help them save as much time and money and energy as possible getting through the legal system and then basically co-parenting with a terrorist who is using the legal system to wear them down and bleed them dry financially. And so these are the cases that cost tons of money, go on for years. Kids are weaponized. Lawyers are like, this is the craziest case I've ever had. And we work with men and women all over the world in these situations. And a very high number of our clients have ADHD. So I thought it would be fascinating to talk about. And then just a little bit about my background. My own divorce took a year and $100,000, which I always say I'm paying back forever. And then I ended up representing myself in court for 7.5 years. So it was a total of about 10 years in court through about 100 appearances in 2 states in America. And then my ex appealed 4 times. I represented myself at the high court level and not only won, but the case was so notable that it got published as case law, which is a really, really big deal. And it's unheard of for someone who's not an attorney. So I always say I'm really proud of that. And then I also gave live testimony that helped pass Jennifer's Law. So you guys have coercive control laws over there, but we were just starting. So my state became the third to expand its legal definition of domestic violence to include those coercive control laws. And then my ex decided to sue my partner Chris and I for $4 million in defamation. This was shortly after the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, but we got that thrown out. It was terrifying, but we got it thrown out. And then I always say we came out with our first baby in 2023. Our first book is called Been There, Got Out: Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances. And our next book is coming out very soon. It's called When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You, since unfortunately that's something that happens in our community and often happens to our own clients, and often their own issues are used against them to try to make them seem unfit as a parent, which is so unfair. So there's so much to talk about, but Lucy, I'm going to let you lead.
Amazing. Well, obviously, there's so much there that we could probably chat about for months on end, how
Right.
amazing and interesting it is. But what obviously sparked my interest was the fact that you're dealing with these really serious cases, and like a lot of your clients have ADHD. So what I wanted to come on and explore was looking at some of the ways that maybe this shows up in relationships and conflict and family dynamics. Because obviously, what you're dealing with from, it's amazing that you've turned your pain and your struggle into such beautiful work. And I think a lot of the best entrepreneurs and business owners have done that. The reason they're so passionate about helping people is because of their journey. I know I'm the same. But you're dealing with like you said, the crazy, most extreme cases ever. But the beauty of that is if you have, strategies and stories from that, there'll be people that resonate much further down the scale, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing, we can't learn. Like if someone's having control issues or maybe issues in relationships and that maybe aren't quite as serious as that, doesn't mean that they still can't learn from this. And we know that it happens day in, day out. Like I've got so many friends and family members that have been in these situations. So I'm really, really excited. So when you sort of say that, a lot of the clients and people that you support have ADHD, what kind of so do they come to you and like is that something that's part of like your onboarding process? Is that something that's uncovered? Like what kind of, how does it kind of show up in terms of the relationship with like you and them when you get started working with this person?
Well, usually they just say it because we'll be working to get like because we only deal with the craziest case and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah. By the way, I have all this is affected by my ADHD and it's really hard to focus and all that." But I want to start with first saying the type of person who ends up in these unhealthy relationships.
Mhm.
Many times, like I always say that our clients are the shining stars. They are the most creative, responsible, entertaining, multitasking. Like they they are so full of light that they draw darkness to them sometimes.
Mhm.
And often people in these unhealthy relationships will beat themselves up and say, I must have been really weak or I must have been a terrible person to fall for someone like that. I want to make clear that it's actually the opposite, that manipulative people are drawn to people who make them look better. So the reason that you're targeted is because you're so successful and because you're so amazing, not because you're flawed. And there's often, I like to mention that most of our clients are very highly educated, super successful. And so there's an added level of shame because they're the people that others who don't understand domestic violence will say, I didn't think someone like you would fall for something like that. And so they feel even more like they can't talk to others about it because there's this shame, which I think is probably inherent with people with ADHD of like some, like, I'm not good enough. And
Mm.
so I just want, again, like want to make it very clear that the reason that if you're listening, you were in something like that, um, it's the opposite of being flawed. It's because you're so amazing and you can do, you've got all these things that you can do probably way better than neurotypical people, if I'm using the right terms. Um, so just know that parasites will sometimes attach themselves to people like you.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting that you said that because with ADHD, there is, especially if people who maybe have been diagnosed later in life and have struggled with things, there is so much shame of like, why can't I do things? Why can't I feel this way? And what you were saying there, it's just like, wow, there's so many of like even my clients who have ADHD who've said things like where they've been in like toxic work environments. Not no one's really opened up about things as serious as that, and I'm obviously very grateful that that's not happened to any of my clients. But a lot of it is things like toxic work environments or family and parent dynamics, and there's so much self-blame of like,
Mm.
"Oh, I should have done this, that, and the other." When I'm listening to it, I'm like, you've done what? No, and it's that not wanting to let other people down, that rejection sensitivity, that inherent feeling of shame. So I'm really interested and curious because a lot of people with ADHD, um, the reason that I sub niched in wanting to specialize with ADHD people was I knew that if I said, look, I've got ADHD, I can help you, that like barrier of oh, this person gets me, I'm not going to be judged, I'm not going to be shamed for struggling with food or struggling with exercise, it's going to be lowered. And that's what I wanted. I wanted people to feel seen and heard. But I can imagine that even in really horrible situations, like, a lot of money's being thrown at them to say, you need to pay this, reaching out for help and support is really freaking hard with ADHD. So, what is it that helps people to reach that? Do you think it is just that like crisis of like if I don't get support, I'm going to be bankrupt, or is there something else that maybe you do, or something else that you've seen that maybe helps these people take that first step? Because obviously, when we're in extremes of we're going to sue you for £1 million, or take your house off you, or take your kids off you, people might reach out, but there'll be people maybe lower down the ladder where it's like I just need to, get out of this house. I just need to maybe cut the ties here. What kind of like do you know has helped people to reach out for help? Maybe that isn't if they're not in that extreme everything's on the line here situation.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and that applies to anybody. I think yes, I recently learned that people with ADHD don't like to ask for help and they don't like to ask questions. So, but I think for people in our space who are stuck in these unhealthy relationships, they've been isolated anyway.
Yeah.
They've been made to feel like if they leave this relationship that no one else will care for them and this is the best they can do. So there's been a lot of work with their brain chemistry being altered. So I think the reason that people start to reach out to us is not when somebody says, "Oh, you should go talk to Lisa and Chris." It's because we do these podcasts and we have our own podcasts, and I love creating content. I used to be a high school English teacher, and
Okay.
so I love, and I'm also a professional writer, so I love coming up with like really good quotes or finding stuff and putting it on our social media and talking about things a lot. And so there's like a level of intimacy that develops when someone keeps putting things out consistently and you can see my face and you can, binge listen to like 300 plus podcast episodes. So I think in general, people in this space tend to be very cagey and they need to be ready to reach out for help when they're ready, not when other people push them to do it.
Mm,
So I think feeling really validated and also hearing people talk about something that they're going through themselves makes them like, okay, I'm going to reach out and start talking. And then usually, when we meet someone for the first time, my partner Chris and I do it on a Zoom call. We don't do like advice over texting. We don't do phone calls. We want to see someone's face because that's such an important thing. Like, well, I'm going to tangent. Like we always talk about something called the 7 38 55% rule, and that's that people only pay attention to 7% of your words, 38% is your tone, and 55% is your body language. So if I can't see who I'm talking to, I'm really missing out and they're missing out on me. And so I think it's really helpful to see somebody's face and often, and then to feel like, okay, this person really understands. And then, with our book out, people feel like they get to know Chris and I.
mm,
Also, I'm kind of messy. Like, I don't really take a lot, like, my hair is always whatever. So I think there's this relatability, like, oh, she's not perfect. She's not coiffed and doesn't know how to do her makeup beautifully. So it's okay. It's okay. So people tend to feel like comfortable and yeah, I think that's what makes people reach out is feeling like we understand what they're dealing with and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And also because I went through it and my partner, who's a man who's 6'3", is also a domestic violence survivor.
wow.
And so I like to say we have both the male and female perspective on domestic violence. We have, I'll get into it a little later maybe, but we have a weekly legal abuse support group. And I always say we do the very unusual thing in the domestic violence space and that we blend our men and women together because we
Mm,
firmly believe that abuse is a human issue. So I think being inclusive in general
yes.
makes people feel like, okay, I can talk and open up and hearing other people talk about their situations in a resolution focused way, like a positive way. We focus on success stories. Of course, we deal with the gut punches as well, but there's like a sense of hopefulness. And I
Mm.
think that sort of might separate us from all the doom scrolling stories that, people see.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what it's about, isn't it? It's community and actually like
Yeah.
that hope. And I think what you were saying at the start of like when you said I just want to put that disclaimer out there if anyone is, in this situation, you're not broken, this, that, and the other. I think sometimes people almost need that light bulb moment as well to reach out for support. Because that's like one of the main intentions of my content is I want everyone, well, not everyone, but everyone who's got ADHD who maybe feels broken around food to have that light bulb of like, well, no, it's not like there's anything wrong with you or you've done anything wrong, but this system was flawed, or you've tried to do things that work for you, or that was never going to work. And like you said, you've not done anything wrong. You're just unfortunately in the situation because of X, Y, and Z. And I think people need those light bulbs and people to be able to communicate that really well. So you mentioned people when they're coming to you and just word vomiting everything that's going on for them, throwing that, oh yeah, I've got ADHD, this, that, and the other is part of that word vomit. So when
Mhm.
you were saying that people, should tell you, and obviously people will tell you because they think it's valuable, they think it's valid to the situation. What kind of situations do you find or circumstances that people with ADHD have that are making these situations more challenging, whether it is in the actual sort of relationship conflict or in the resolution, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. So I think that because I hear about what they were like in the relationship, but I really meet them usually when they have made the choice to get out and they are going through the muck of family court, or they have been out for a while and their ex is still terrorizing them and threatening to bring them back to court and threatening to take their child away or to reduce the level of support or make them homeless. So there's always some kind of threat in the background and this sense of dread. So I think ADHD, people with ADHD sometimes see things as like black and white, like all or nothing, like, oh my gosh, and they'll catastrophize. And this is something that we all do in our community. I do it too. Is we think like, oh my gosh, like everything's going to be awful, or if I can't do this one thing, like everything's going to fall apart. So, in general, like we like to focus on how it's first it's more of like it's going to be okay. I spent 10 years in the legal system. Like we've got all of these people here to help you and this whole community, and it's going to get better. I promise you. But one of the ways that we work with people more than anything is on something called strategic communication. So I know that with ADHD, there's like a craving for dopamine all the time. And so often there's a power dynamic that's been established in the relationship where there's a lot of drama. And so dopamine comes with drama, like it's kind of exciting to fight. And so when you are with somebody who has this power and control and you get out of the relationship, they often are limited in the ways to still hurt you and to still have that control over your life. And so with our clients, many of them, most of them have children with their exes, and so they still have to co-parent. So we work on how they can communicate in writing only, where they're writing to their ex, but for that invisible audience. So a lot of times people fall into the back and forth and, engaging with their ex when we do a lot with teaching them how to starve their ex. We'll say, we teach a system that we came up with. It's called FRAC, FRAC, and it's where you're writing to your ex for the invisible audience, but the goal is to present as the best co-parent ever, but at the same time, you're documenting your ex's patterns of behavior over time and the impact it has on your children and on your relationship with your children. And part of this process involves turning the power dynamic around in the relationship because
Mm.
there's always all this fear and like PTSD. And every time I get an email from my ex, like, oh, it's so scary and I can't deal with it. So it's like learning to lower the levels of engagement and to get the dopamine from dealing, like actually figuring out how that power dynamic shifts
Mm.
rather than just the back and forth and still being pulled into the conflict where that person has that control, more like recognizing the patterns and being able to emotionally detach.
That's amazing. So it's like that idea of the dopamine's coming from drama. And a lot of people probably don't realize this. And again, we're not saying that you're flawed for this, but people stay in these kind of stressful situations because there's almost that subconscious like love of, but I'm getting dopamine, so I'm gaining something from it. It's like idea of secondary gain, right? So what you're saying there is actually what we're doing is we're making people realize, well, you're gaining something from this, but it's not actually helping you. So
Right.
let's gain that same feeling, let's gain that same energy, but in a productive way. So let's take the power back, take the control back. I guess it's very similar to clients that come to me who are overeating, right? Getting dopamine from overeating,
Hmm.
it feels good, but it's impacting their health, it's impacting their confidence. It's like, well, we can get dopamine from exercise, we can get dopamine from other things. And then it doesn't feel the same, it's not the same, but it's still giving you the dopamine in a positive way. And that's what you're doing there, which is absolutely amazing. And what's like obviously I bet there's resistance and weirdness at first, but like how does it change people? Like I can imagine like taking that power back really transforms people beyond just okay, the situation's less bad, but I can imagine internally for people it's transformative.
Yeah, it really is. It is one of the most healing things people do is through writing. And I think there's this misconception about AI, like, oh, I can use AI to communicate with my ex. Okay, AI is a tool, but when you use AI as a buffer, you're not dealing with the underlying problem, and
Yeah.
that's your own fear of this bully. You're putting something up, but it's still scary. So learning how to write to your ex and understand their reactions and start cornering them in their own behavior is very, very satisfying. And
Mm.
so, and just being a writer, I'm like, there's so much power in words and being able to influence people with words, especially someone who was the authority in your life that, over time you didn't even question. And now to be able to pause a little bit and start questioning their reality there's a lot of humor in it also because you're like, I can't believe that I that I believe this craziness that I was part of it. So it is really, really satisfying to teach strategic communication. You see the visible difference on, we work on screens with people because our clients are all over the world, but a lot of times when we first meet, they're not breathing and like they're holding their breath, their body is really, really tight, they talk really fast from trauma. So slowing them down is helpful. So we do something called putting them on the permission slip plan, and we'll say when you have something you want to say to your ex, like get it out and then send it to us, and you have to wait. You have to wait till we say it's okay. And so but get it out, get it out. And like sometimes, our clients who we've had longer, they'll be like draft like I know I'm not sending this, and they'll just be like about this what they would wish they could say, but they know that's not going to end up with their ex, and then we like put it in the kind of like Willy Wonka-ish machine, and we'll like edit and help them
Yeah.
a little bit, and then they learn what they're supposed to do, but know that they still have to be able to get out that
I love that.
those
Yeah.
feelings.
I think I might need like a friend for that because there's a massive thing with ADHD and impulsivity. And I'm guessing, obviously, when you're emotional, we all like just react rather than respond, right? But with ADHD, that's heightened. And I know I for sure have sent messages and said things that had I just paused and waited, I'd have thought about that in a different way. And I've bought things and done things where I just wish, why did I not just have a buffer or a thought like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And that's amazing, that system. And actually, I'm gonna have to think of a way that I can implement that either for my clients or
Yeah,
my own self, because with that sense of impulsivity and ADHD of like, they said this, no, I'm gonna say this back because I'm
yeah.
in that reactive state. We never ever ever say anything good or do good from reactive emotional states, right? It's that logical processing. So that's an absolutely immense tool, which is amazing. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, people have to get it out.
Oh
So
God,
I
yeah,
think there's
100%.
the idea of like, oh, I can't write it until it's perfect and I have to use your frac method. I'm like, no, 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 get it out. Like we have a whole stack of stuff that's hysterical, that's never going to go to the actual, recipients that will just save. But then they learn how to do it properly, but it still needs to get out. I don't think people should self-censor their feelings. It's just for us, we're very, very conscious of that invisible audience, and our clients' attorneys are as well. And they're like, don't mess up your own case, but get those feelings out. And that's where people sometimes mistake that they don't realize there's other resources out there, and they'll be spending tons of money writing to their lawyer, but this is what I want to say, and then thousands of dollars later, it's like, how did this happen? It's because you didn't use the right resource. You needed to get it out, but not to your attorney or barrister
Absolutely. And I
or
guess even
solicitor.
just something as simple as like pen and paper could be fantastic. Like
Yeah.
just in the moment, just get it all out, dump it, dump it, dump it, and then come back.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
love
many of our clients with ADHD also they're super funny, and they have these acts that they want to do comedy acts, and we're just like, I say like get it out, but like don't post it yet because your case is still active.
yeah.
But get it out, make the videos, just pause, just put it off to the side.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are there any other ways where maybe, dealing with a situation like this, which is, I mean, it's going to be tough for absolutely anyone, right? But is there any other ways that you see any ADHD manifest in terms of like the resolutions, the conflict that again that we can learn from? Because I've already taken so much just from that insight alone, which was amazing.
Yeah. So one thing that happens in divorce in general is something called discovery, where often it's financial, not just financial, where you'll get hit with like 40 something questions from the opposing counsel, the other side's attorney, and it's often very intimidating. Sometimes it's a form of harassment. And so you have to start going through all your financial records, your personal records. It's like a total invasion of privacy, and you have to organize all these notes and then, bank statements and credit cards from years ago. And it is completely overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
hard for anybody.
My brain's just shutting down thinking about
I
even
know,
having to do
I
that.
know.
Yeah, yeah,
And so our people, everybody gets paralyzed. I mean, some of them don't, like the accountants are okay, but
yeah,
most people are like, I can't do this. I can't do it. It's overwhelming. I can't, I don't even know where to start. My desk is covered with papers all over. And so sometimes that can get without help, that can get expensive because there are deadlines and lawyers get frustrated and you can end up harming your case when you don't meet those deadlines. So it's really, really difficult for people whose brains go off on tangents and, have an issue with time. I learned the term time blindness yesterday and how people with ADHD sometimes forget as time is passing. And that's also an issue because it's expensive. Divorce is expensive. Like I just mentioned, time with lawyers, solicitors, barristers, it's expensive. So when you can't get things done and when you can't stay focused on the issues that you need to really talk about, it just gets whittled away and you're getting these huge, huge bills and feeling like you're not accomplishing something. So also I sometimes I find with clients like we'll be in a session which are an hour, it's an hour long, and we have like a little section when they sign up, like notes and resources, and we'll say like if there's anything you want to talk about, and they can list all the things, put whatever they want in there. And sometimes clients with ADHD, they'll be like, okay, I want to cover these things. And then we start, and then they'll be like, oh, but blah, 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 blah. And they talk about other stuff. And I feel like, well, it's their session. So I don't want to be like, oh, we have to cover this. But sometimes the time goes away and then it's like, oh, shoot, we've got 12 minutes. Like, now we gotta work on all these communications and how does my speech sound? And so, reining it in is tricky. But yeah, I mean, and I just also think that that low threshold for frustration is really hard for people with ADHD in the legal system because the legal system itself is very, very slow.
Mm.
There's delays all the time. The exes opposing counsel will like create chaos and things, there's lots of distractions, and so it ends up like making things harder and harder. And it like for anyone dealing with legal abuse, there's really three emotions that I think are amplified with someone with ADHD. One is rage. It's just like there's so much anger about like why I have to go through something like this. And then the next thing is a sense of injustice.
Mm.
Of like it's just not fair, especially because our clients' exes are totally taking advantage. There and often like our clients are very because they're traumatized, whether or not they have ADHD, and that only can make it harder. They're like I said, they present as like talking very, very fast, kind of all over the place. And they're often up against like a manipulative con artist, pathological liar who can be very calm and loves the audience of court and loves manipulating people. And in the meantime, our people are like, oh my God, like I'm so worried about myself and my kids. So presentation, working on presentation is really important by helping them stay focused and organized on the things that actually matter. So dealing with the fear and confusion and ignorance is like a big thing that we deal with. That's what we work on. So
Mm.
they're not so terrified.
Yeah, and I completely related to all of that with like the overwhelm and
Oh, I
the
forgot the third emotion. Sorry. I
oh
said rage, injustice, despair. It's never going to get better.
yeah,
And
catastrophizing. Yeah,
yeah, so those are the three.
100%. And like that one about that the in the justice sensitivity, like when things don't feel fair, it really feels unfair. When I speak about with clients a lot when there's things going on in their personal life and it's just feels so unfair. And it's why like a lot of ADHDers can feel so emotional, like watching the news and things. Like they'll
Hmm.
see this news article and it's got nothing to do with them, but it just feels so wrong. Like I actually put on my story this morning that I have this really weird sense of guilt that I'm
Hmm.
enjoying Christmas and the festive time, but there's so much going on in the world that's just so unfair. And it's really, really strong. It's a really strong feeling that if you don't have ADHD, it's very hard to describe. So how do you help people work through that then? Because in these situations, right, there will be a lot of unfairness, right? The fact that this person is in this horrible situation in a relationship where they're the victim, but they're getting almost penalized for it, right? With these
Yeah.
battles in court and fines and we're taking your kids off you and we're having these battles. So do you have any strategies to help people actually deal with that sense of well, it's not fair, but here's what we're doing about it. Because I know that when I feel like that, I'm in a very emotionally charged state and it can be quite hard to come down from.
Yeah, so feeling like that, that's that all or nothing, like everything is awful, everything is wrong. I'm thinking about yesterday, actually, we met with a client, we hadn't seen her in years. Like she came back And she's just like, everything is awful. I want to like sue my ex for more alimony, even though like the kids are adults and there's no way, like there's no way it's going to happen. But as we started talking, and she was saying like everything is wrong, and I'm going to be homeless, and I'm like I have no career, and I've got what is it called? Oh my God, I can't remember, where you don't want to leave the house. What's that phobia?
Phobia?
Yes, agoraphobia. Thank you. Um, but as we started talking, I was asking her some questions, and I'm like, wait a second, but you just mentioned that you reunited with your kids after 8 years, which is huge, 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 and you have a great relationship with both of them, which is unheard of. You said that you actually are you are taking care of your parents, and you have a place to stay, and you've also got like all these other things that are really, really hopeful. And so I think just helping, like talking through and reminding her like what she had just said within that hour, like really calmed her down from catastrophizing. And we came up with some employment ideas that she's really capable of. Like she's an artist and she's a trained educator. I'm like, okay, you've got this amazing thing, like experience, that I can promise you there's millions of people in our space that need to hear what you've been through. You're an educator. You can write curriculum on this. You can do an online course. You can do support. Like there's all these things, and you don't even need to leave your house. So what about thinking, so you can see just the like, okay, like a sense of hopefulness again, I think is really important. And breaking things down into very small steps is how we tend to be really effective. By the way, do you guys have this thing? We have it in America outside a lot of used car places. I call it a balloon man. It's like a tube that goes
Yeah,
woo.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's our victory symbol. So we have like a little mini one. And during our support group and also with clients, when they will mention something, it doesn't have to be like I completely killed it in court, which does happen a lot, but just making like some significant step in progress. We'll be like, ah, you get the balloon man, and we'll do like the balloon man. And we have in our monthly newsletter a little section called "From Puddle to Ninja," because that's our client's transformation. And we'll have like the little waving balloon man. I think like helping people do things in little bits, and then acknowledging the progress, like with the woman I spoke of yesterday, like telling her, notice what you yourself have accomplished that maybe you can't see right now, but I can see, and I've known you for years. Like this is really big. So reminding people of how amazing they are and what they've accomplished is important. Using symbols. I think what you also said before that's helpful is to teach people how it's okay to ask for help, and that there's people to ask. So when they're freaking out about something, like I don't even know where to start, and I'm like, okay, well, we can help with this part, but being able to provide resources, especially free resources, will be like, okay, here's something you can actually ask the clerk at the court. So either just go down there or just make a phone call, ask for this department, ask for this person, ask this question, and then let us know what happens. So feeling like there's people that care, and there's people to check back to make sure that it got done. That makes things a little bit easier, where it's not like, oh my God, like how am I going to do this whole thing by myself? You're not by yourself. You're not by yourself. So that's very helpful too. And another thing is with those little small steps, and this word I also learned yesterday is about gamifying with that dopamine. Like for example, taking care of that financial discovery where it's like 40 questions, to maybe say, let's go through a couple. You can spend like 5 minutes. And I also learned that it's great to use analog clocks, like timers, where you could see, like for example, like you turn it and you see like there's a red thing and it slowly goes down, so you can actually see time rather than just a digital clock where there's no sense of time. But to do something for 5 minutes, if you can just work on this for 5 minutes, and then sometimes you'll get that momentum and then keep going. So that's really helpful too. And then I have one other strategy that I just learned that you kind of alluded to. I didn't know that the term for it, body doubling.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, this is awesome because this is kind of like what Chris and I do is when there's a task that you really don't want to do, and that's basically everything when it comes to difficult divorce and custody battles, is to have a friend or a coach like do stuff at the same time if they're not directly helping you. But like this is something my partner and I guess, have been doing anyway. We're like, we'll both turn on the Zoom camera and I'll be like, okay, I'm working on my thing, you work on your thing. And we can look at each other and be like, don't get out of the chair. Like keep working on this for a while, and it's almost like an accountability partner. So that I think is also built into our community where we meet every week, whoever wants to, for the support group, where people are checking in on each other and being like, what happened? Like, who had court? Like, how did it go? Whether it was good or bad, like, we're all kind of here for you.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. So there's one final question I want to cover because I can imagine you have some absolutely incredible success stories where, eventually everything is resolved and obviously it's not sunshine rainbows, but the person can move on with their life and live a happy life and it be peaceful. But there's going to be so many, I can imagine, times when maybe things don't go the way that you'd want. We can't all be successful. There'll be times where things maybe feel like they're going really well and then there's a spanner in the works and you don't expect it. And there's some quite horrible things. Now, with ADHD, when things go wrong, something that I see with the people that I support in both my businesses, and especially in my mentoring business. So I have a second business where I mentor newer coaches to help on their business. The clients that I, either identify as or are neurodivergent, I often see that when something goes wrong, everything feels like it's going well, and then there's a spanner in the works. There is just this shutdown, catastrophization. And thankfully, not in my world, but I've seen it before where people will just literally then just ghost and disappear and go quiet because they feel like they failed, even though it might not be anything they've done inherently wrong. Like it might be just the way of the world or whatever. How do you help people come back from that? If, like everything feels like it's going well in the case and then something's thrown in and it's sent them back and they feel like they failed. How do you help people?
So that happens all the time. That I mean, that's what we talked about when I mentioned gut punches, where it's like, oh, I think just having gone through all these years, like 10 years basically in the legal system with my ex, like I had those gut punches and then I had tremendous triumphs. And so we often do a lot with storytelling with our clients and talking about what it feels like. And we often will say, it's not that our people lose, it's that they give up too soon because
Right.
they get those gut punches. And so, being a New Yorker, and my partner's also a New Yorker, we talk about doing our harsh New York reality check and we'll be like, this is not, it's not going to be easy, but like, let's think of how you can come back and do better. Like, I don't want to hear it about the judge is corrupt and the system is broken. Like, this is the system that we are working within. And you're talking to a woman who was up also against a very rich ex. Yes, I am white and I am well educated, so I acknowledge that. But don't make excuses and live in this victim mentality because there's always ways you can learn and you can learn to do better. And a big thing of what we teach has to do with the art of persuasion. And so people often on social media will be like, oh, the judges need to be educated and the system has to change and the system's broken. But like, yeah, but that doesn't do a thing. So we take a bottoms up approach rather than a top down because it's never going to change in time for you to get your case through it. So there's an author who unfortunately died a few years ago. His name is Evan Stark, and he wrote a book called Coercive Control. And I got to see him at a conference, and he was talking about how the burden and the responsibility is really on us as litigants to educate judges through our own stories and our own experiences to make them change the laws and why. So it's really about building a very compelling case. And my own experience all these years, I did really well in court. It just took a long time for enforcement. And then the appeal did amazing, with winning that, and then getting it published. So but it didn't happen immediately. So when people get frustrated, reminding them and having others around them, we call them our grizzled veterans who have been in the system for a while, who are telling these war stories, who can say, like, I was you 3 years ago. I was also homeless. I also had my kids taken away, but I got custody back. I got my own apartment, but it takes time and it's really, really scary. But I can help you. We can help you. We have all kinds of resources all over the world, therapists, lawyers, coaches, whoever. that can help. And so knowing that they are not the only ones going through this and they're interacting with people who have been exactly where they've been is really good in terms of like pulling them along and reminding them like nobody's done this before. Of course you don't know what you're doing. Of course you're making mistakes. Of course you're not perfect. And you popped off to your ex and said something, but like you can always come back. Like nothing is permanent. Even if the worst thing happened, you lost custody in a year and a half to 2 years, you could spend that time building a really strong case and figuring out how to make it change. And even if your kid is over 18 and doesn't talk to you anymore, we have resources who have effective, proven ways of how you can do better to try to repair that relationship. So it's never permanent and just constantly reminding people like this isn't permanent, it's a gut punch.
Mm.
So you can wallow in this for a while and then we're going to figure out how to get you back up again.
Yeah. And I think that's why like having support can be so valuable in these sort of situations because a lot of people who are neurodivergent do struggle to think about future self. If you're saying, it'll be fine, this will figure out in a couple of years. If you're on your own, that can be so hard to mentally conceptualize. All you're thinking about is the here, the now, and this is where that catastrophization manifests. But to have a coach, a mentor, a community where they've been through it, they can remind you, they can show you evidence, stops people, like I said, from the only way you ever fail is giving up, right? Like you said
Yeah.
which is I love that. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, in so many ways, I think like most of our clients who stick with it are success stories because they make progress, and the goal is like to get out of the system and go on with your life, have a peaceful life. So it takes time and tenacity. We call it the marathon mindset. It's not just that it's going to take a while, it's how do you train for something like this?
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of challenging things are that, we live in such a quick and another thing with ADHD, I mean, everyone in this day and age, it's very quick fix, isn't it? We want everything yesterday with the way of the world. But
Mhm.
ADHD, even more so, that impulsivity, that dopamine seeking. So to be able to support people in having that mindset is so valuable because I personally don't think unless you can change your mindset in something, whether it is this, whether it is fitness, to the bigger picture, longer term game, whether it's business, you will fail because your mind will beat you before the system or the way of the world does.
Right, right.
Amazing. Well, that has been insane. Like, I feel like I've taken so much from that is so valuable for my understanding, but also that cross transferable into other domains. And this is the thing, right, with coaching and support. It's, what you do is so niche and to an extent extreme, but like there's so much practicality from what you said there to apply to a fitness journey, building a business, maybe even smaller scale relationship and family dynamic struggles. And so that's been absolutely incredible. So on that note, I'm sure there'll be many people listening to this who thought that was so helpful, so valuable, and maybe want to go deeper on this, learn more from you, like you mentioned, podcast book. So I'll leave it all in the description, but where can people find you just so they can find you and get some more support
Super
guidance?
easy. Super easy. Just our website is beentheregotout.com, and on social media, Instagram's my home base, but we're all over. Been There Got Out with like little underscores between. The book is called Been There Got Out with the subtitle. The same next for this next one. The podcast is called Been There Got Out. The YouTube
Brilliant.
channel's Been There Got Out. Easy,
Brilliant. Keeping
easy.
it nice and easy. Fantastic. Well, if you send me those links, I'll make sure that they're linked in the notes so that people can go to them if this is obviously valuable to them. And, unfortunately, there will be people that maybe this is valuable to them. Not unfortunate for you, obviously, but unfortunate they're in this situation, but fortunate that there is someone that they can come consume content, access resources, whether that's paid or free, and get some really, you'll have heard today how great the advice and guidance was, just get some great help and help from someone who, like you're saying, just is another normal human being. It isn't fancy jargon. It isn't overcomplicated. It's we're real humans. I've been through it. Let me help you through it.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, thank you so, so much for your time today. That has been sensational. And for all the regular listeners, I will see you on the next episode.